Okay, so today we're going to talk about learning disabilities and child find and student support teams. When you're communicating with the parents, there are a few things you need to know before initiating a student support team. When you talk with parents, you have to be factual, not emotional. So be honest but not brutal. Try to get parents and guardians to listen to the child read at home for 10 minutes a day. Ask the parent or guardian about their expectations for their child. Ask about homework, where homework is completed, if it's on their own or if they're getting help. Do the student have the initiative to get it completed themselves, or do they have to be constantly reminded to do their homework? Ask parents to participate as a student study team. The purpose of a student study team is to find ways to help and support children in their academic, social, and behavioral progress. When the parents are preparing for the student study team, there is a sheet that you give to the parents and you ask them to bring back to the initial meeting. The parent preparation sheet asks for things about the child, such as their strengths, any concerns about the child, things that might be helpful, things that could motivate them, and some goals and expectations. There's also a worksheet completed by the student that asks about similar type of things, and depending on what grade they're at, they're either given the elementary or the secondary student worksheet, and both of them have to come back. Some predictable feelings and reactions of parents. When the parents first learn that their child is having problems at school, they may show some of the following reactions, like these vary in intensity and duration and may or may not be voiced. But some parents could react shocked or be in denial, where the parent denies there are problems. Will say things like, all kids fight, or she reads just fine at home, he's just going through a phase. They could become angry, feel guilt, or blame people. The parent admits they're a problem, but they're blaming the teacher, or the school, or the ex, or only this hadn't happened, then the child wouldn't be like this. They could do like a resignation phase, where like he's always been like that, say things like it runs in the family. They could have a depression to it, where the parent will say, I can't bear with this, what will people think, why is this happening? And some will be accepting of it and willing to work and say things like, I believe I understand the issues and would like to work on a plan to resolve them, and say this is difficult for us, but we want to find ways to support and encourage our child. So the student study team does the following. They gather student data, they monitor the student, how they're behaving, how they're working, what a daily school day looks like. They plan strategies to assist the student within the resources of the general education program. They monitor the student progress, see if what's helping, what's not. They build trust between the parent and the school, and they make referrals for formal evaluation when needed. The purpose of an SST is to help teachers and parents find a way to keep the child who has an academic, social, health, behavioral, or attendance problems in regular education as much as possible. Here's an example of a student summary sheet for a student study team. We have a girl named Sabrina. She is in 2nd grade. We have a list of her strengths, where she likes art, she draws, she's quiet, has friends. Then we have the known column, where it's the information, what percentile she reads at, what percentile her math is. She seems immature at times, lacks confidence. Modifications. So in that column you put modifications for the student, sits near the front. Incomplete work is sent home, and the mom helps complete it. You have a list of concerns, any questions that you may not know at the time and would like to know the answer to. You can brainstorm some strategies to help them and what actions you want to put into plan, and talk about the responsibility, and then of course have a follow-up date, see if any of this is working, if anything needs to be changed. The role of accommodations with the process of an SST. Team members may use accommodations modifications. Some examples of this change their seating, like in the previous example sheet of it. She sits near the front of the room. Limit the number of directions. Assign a student buddy. Sit with the child to initiate the work. Shorten the assignments. Provide an alternate assignment at a lower level. Keep daily parent-teacher notes. That way you're communicating with the parent as well. Use rewards to stimulate work completion if they're having a hard time focusing to complete their work. Allow some extra time on timed tests that are not standardized. And provide the student with a quiet setting free of distractions in which to take tests. And of course there are a number of different accommodations and modifications that are all not listed here. Some digital accommodations can benefit students as well. Computer games allow children to practice basic skills such as math, phonics, and reading skills, but they're looking at it like a game, so they don't necessarily know that they are learning. Some children respond readily to computer-based expression methods, especially if there's an instant visual reward associated with the completion of a task, such as a check mark or a bonus game or some kind of certificate. Other types of digital accommodations include giving the student a laptop to type up notes, record lectures, or complete assignments. There are other digital accommodations such as use of picture boards, writing boards, digital text readers, or they can use voice recognition to write papers or take notes. There are different sensory accommodations. This includes different types of seats, sensory feedback mats, manipulatives, headphones, types of clothes. They're designed to help manage sensory information sent to the brain. So if a student is very fidgety or they have to constantly do something with their hand, a sensory seat can help the fidgeting. Manipulatives can play with it in their hand or something like that. There are specially fitted vests that have weights and vests that have many pockets in it. For those students that need those kind of sensory accommodations, there are also seat wedges that they can mess around with. So, provisions of the PL 94-142 talks about the least restrictive environment. The intent is to provide each handicapped child between the ages of 3 and 21 with a free and appropriate education in the least restrictive environment. These services are available to individuals who are learning disabled, visually disabled, severely emotionally disturbed, hearing disabled, and anything that fits under a broad category. They extended special services to at-risk and developmentally delayed infants and toddlers from the birth of age 2. Parents have rights as well, and it is required by the federal law. The intent of the laws is that the parents will be involved at every stage in the evaluation and planning progress and must be kept informed of their child's progress. This is a legal requirement that parents will be given a copy of their rights, and parents have the right to require confidential treatment of their children's records, and only limited to a group of people within the school should have an access to them. They have the right to review and inspect records, have all copies of all records and any documentation regarding the child on file with the school. They have the right to release records to non-school personnel when permission is obtained by the school in writing. They also have the right to be notified in advance of at least 10 days of any meeting pertaining to their child, and they may bring anyone who they want and may record meetings. They can request an assessment for their child. They can be apprised of the assessment tools being used and have the child assessed in his own language. Request an independent evaluation at a public expense if they do not agree with the district's evaluation. They can have input into the development of the IEP, the individual education plan. They can refuse services or placement in special education if they desire. They can have an independent or fully paid private school placement if it is deemed necessary to meet the child's needs. They have the right to request and have a fair hearing if disagreements arise in regard to identification, placement, or services. There was a court case, Ronker versus Walter, and the court case required a school to serve a child with a disability in a non-segregating setting when the necessary supports could be provided to make that setting appropriate. Then we got the Law 34, CFR 300-116, and the Universal Education Vision Statement. The Law 34 states that students with disabilities cannot be removed from general education simply because they need modification to the general curriculum. And the Universal Education Vision Statement honors the right of students to learn together, and this was adopted by the Michigan State Board of Education in October of 2005. The 20 U.S.C. 1401-10 law requires schools to employ only highly qualified special education teachers. A highly qualified special education teacher must have several qualifications related to providing specialized instruction. They must also have content matter qualifications that meets the highly qualified standards in the No Child Left Behind law. It requires all schools to offer all students access to the general curriculum according to the standards set by the state. Special education classes must offer students with disabilities access to the curriculum that addresses the grade level content expectations up to 8th grade and the high school graduation standards 9th through 12th grade. LRA in Section 504 requires students to be in the least restrictive environment and states that if students are placed away from a regular school, the facilities, equipment, and programs available in that placement must be comparable to those in a regular school, so they cannot be denied if they are not at a regular school. There are things that a multidisciplinary team process does. Multidisciplinary team diagnoses a child with learning disabilities, and it involves a multi-step process within the school system. Usually teacher and educational professional notes problem areas for a student and schedules a meeting with the child's caregivers to review the diagnostic progress. The evaluation of a child's progress and abilities is designed to examine multiple aspects of the child's performance and is usually carried out by a team. The team thing ensures that the child's evaluation is more complete rather than having one person dictate everything. So, there was a case in California in 1979, the Larry P. versus Riles case, and this is in relationship to IQ. So the case summary: in the school district at the time, students who were experiencing academic difficulty were assessed by a school psychologist using an IQ test. Their score on the test determined whether or not the student was to be placed in special education, and at the time the special education program was called EMR, or Educable Mental Retardation. One of the students tested for EMR was Larry P., who was an African American student. In the school that Larry P. attended, there was a disproportionate number of African American students to the white students in EMR classes. The student population was 9% African American, but the EMR classes were 27% African American, so they were being placed there more often than white students in the ratio. Larry P.'s side argued that IQ tests were biased and discriminated against African American students. The IQ test resulted in disproportionate placement of African American students in EMR classes that limited their education. They also claimed that the higher incidence of intellectual disabilities among African American students were due to genetic, societal, and environmental factors. So as a result of this case, controversy arose over whether IQ tests are racially or culturally discriminated. The court rules that intellectual functioning of a black child must be gauged by his adaptive behaviors, personal history and development, classroom performance, and academic achievement, so not by IQ tests.